Good morning, happy World Luge Day, and welcome to the 56th FIL European Championships. Hi again, everyone. This is Tim Singer. It's stop number 6 on the EBERSPA Luge World Cup Tour, and we are in Winterberg, Germany, in the Hoche Sauerland, with another beautiful day. Get set for a couple of good races today, as those European Championship medals will be on the line for men's singles, as well as the team relay. It's the 4th team relay of the season, and the last team relay event until the final World Cup, not for over a month from now. That will be in Beijing, China. Beautiful overhead look at this track. The men's and women's start, the extended start house, great facility here at the Veltins Ice Arena. They have done a good job throughout all of the 21st century in modernizing everything from the start house to the finish house to an extended hospitality building down here, not far from the outrun. And the track has been in terrific shape all weekend long, thanks in good part to the weather. We'll talk more about the weather in a little bit, but all I can tell you right off of the bat is that track records have been falling left, right, top to bottom. That man right there is Nico Gleischer of Austria. He's the World Cup leader. He's the man they'll be chasing. He holds about a 15-point lead right now over Germany's Max Langenhahn in the World Cup standings. There's a look at Gins Berzinch. Gins will be sliding today for Latvia among the seeded group. The former Youth Olympic gold medal should be in contention at least for a top 10 result. That's what he's been doing all season long. Again, Nico right there. Nico with the 2 victories, 1 second place finish so far this year on the World Cup Tour. And a couple of those victories have been pretty dominating ones. George Hackl has been a big key to the Austrian success this year, moving over from his long-time association with his home country of Germany. George has done wonders to the German technical end of things, or the Austrian rather, to make those sleds among the fastest in the world, if not overall the fastest. All told, we have 21 nations, 157 athletes who came to Winterberg this weekend to compete in all of the races, including the 4 World Cup events over the weekend, along with the Nations Cup on Friday. This is stop number 6 on the World Cup Luge Tour. It began way back in November with races in Lillehammer, Norway, then Innsbruck, Austria. Then we headed to Oberhof, Germany, Sigulda, Latvia, Altenburg, Germany last week. Now we're in Winterberg, and next week we head back to Oberhof before the trip overseas, across the Atlantic, across the North American continent, and into Western Canada for the biggest event of all, the World Championships, to be held early February in Whistler, British Columbia. The World Cup season will conclude with 2 Asian events. Great to be returning back to that continent and checking out the courses in Pyeongchang, South Korea, and Yangjing, Beijing, China, to conclude the season. Christer Zapper-Jodes on the left, Nico Gleischer on the right. Together they have 10 World Cup victories on their resume combined. 3 times this Winterberg track has hosted the World Luge Championships, first in 1989, then just 2 years later, 1991, and most recently, 2019. There's Jonas Mueller. Good to have that world champion back in the field this weekend. Jonas took last week off, skipped the race in Altenburg, saying he needed a break. He just didn't think it would help his confidence to be racing on an Altenburg track, which he's just found to be a little bit rough in years past. Felix Locke, 37 years old and going strong still. The 2-time Olympic gold medalist has been on the podium several times this season.
European Championship 2. Also gleich geht's hier mit dem EBERSPA Rodelweltcup weiter im Einsitzer der Männer. Gleichzeitig die Europameisterschaft Eine wunderschöne Bahn. Wir sehen jetzt das Bild der silbernen Schlange, der Felddienst-Eis.
Terrific view of the Veltins Kreisel on the right side of your screen. A 270-degree turn happens very early off of the double start, but these men will be taking in a lot greater speed when they hit that corner. Winterberg is about a 2-hour drive north of the city of Frankfurt. That's where most of the out-of-towners fly into, although the Dortmund airport is not too far from here as well. The key areas, Omega, Kreisel, Ziel Curve, all of those corners will have shades on at least part of them today due to the warm temperatures and the sunshine. The tricky area is right there, off of curve 11 and down through a lower labyrinth 12-13 combination into the uphill corner number 14, Die Ziel Curve. Now we'll give you a better look right from start to finish. Steep paddles, a lot bigger drop off than the women had yesterday into the curve 0, an added curve after they constructed this track. Then the first big turn is this corner, curve number 2, a right-hand turn, which takes these lugers just past the double start. That's where the relay will commence a little later on today. And then a left-hand corner of curve number 5. One little curve 6. And the Veltins Kreisel is corner number 7. A couple of little turns. Left-hand drop-off vertically on curve 9. And then here's the crux of this course, 11, 12, 13, tight turns into the finish curve. For the men, 1,324 meters. Speeds could reach 82, 83 miles per hour. It's warm, it's sunny, very little wind. It's a beautiful day to watch a luge race. We'll see if it's also a good day to have a fast time as a luge athlete. They've done a great job setting up this track. Anton Dukash set that track record just 2 days ago in winning the Nations Cup competition. As for the start record, is one of the oldest in the world, Andy Langenhahn, in December of 2013, set a start record that has not been eclipsed in a dozen seasons. 30 will start, 20 will make it into run number 2. And as far as the racers to watch, Langenhahn and Locke, they've been on the podium regularly. The two Germans really have an opportunity here to make a statement and try to catch up to Nico Gleicher of Austria. You may recall that in 2 successive weekends, including in Oberhof, Germany, Austria not only swept the podium, they swept the top 4 positions in men's singles races. As always, Christopher's Apriots fan club and plenty of Latvian spectators are on hand to watch the action here on World Luge Day. I'll try to find out more about what World Luge Day is all about. Standing there all alone is our crack photographer, Michael, who will be taking great shots. You can check him out on the FIL Luge.org website or all sorts of social media. So here we go, flying solo again in men's singles. It's commentator singles. I'll be alone, but I welcome your comments and your questions and your suggestions and predictions as we make our way around the world here on the FIL Luge World Cup. Thanks for tuning in. Our first competitor getting set at the top from Team Italy. It's Leon Felderer. And Leon was speaking about the Italian program earlier this week when he mentioned that Winterberg suits us all a lot better. He said we're hoping for an Italian festival. Of course, just a couple of podiums would be nice. As for Leon individually, he says he likes this track. He prefers gliding tracks. We'll see how Leon does here. Yesterday, his teammates, Vetter and Oberhofer, made it onto the podium for Italy for the first time this season. 3 quick paddles, quick settle, and on course as this race is underway. Men's singles run number 1 from Winterberg, Germany. Felderer, 24 years old, 2022 Olympian, who was part of an Italian team that finished in 5th place in the relay competition. To the finish, Leon Felderer, competitor number 1. His time is a 51.493. 51.493, 2/10 of a second off of the track record that was set 2 days ago in the Nations Cup. Felderer finished in 5th place in that Nations Cup competition. His best speed, 82.9 miles per hour. Imagine that going that fast on a track as he gets bucked around down here in the curve 12-13 combination and does all he can athletically to keep the sled in the right direction. Andrei Manzi, one of 2 Ukrainians to finish in the top 5 on Friday in Nations Cup. He and Anton Dukash have been really battling each week for the top spot for Team Ukraine, and Andrei was part of the Ukrainian historic podium-winning team relay squad a couple of weeks ago in Sigulda. So it was great to see him stand on the podium for the first time in his career at a World Cup. 36 years old, from the city of Kremenets, who's been on the national team since 2009. Out of the Veltenskreisel, trailing the Italian right now by a 1/10 of a second. And skidding a little bit here. To the finish, Andrei Manzi of Ukraine, competitor number 2, finds some time, and as you see by the smallest of margins, he takes over the lead by 5/1000ths of a second, shaking his head up the outrun in apparent disappointment. Ukrainian flags flying on our YouTube video chat window. Thank you so much, everyone, for waking up early to catch World Cup action. Dwight Bell, Matthias Bomer, 2 of the FIL officials on hand here today, as Alex Ferlazzo, the pride of Townsville, Australia, grabs those handles with the spiked gloves. 4 paddles for Alex, although he has a little bit of steering he needs to do to keep it off of the wall on the start ramp. 3.836 start time. And holding the slightest advantage right now over Andrei Manzi. For Alex, coming off of a breakout season last year, this season has been a bit of a mixed bag. His best result, only a 17th place. And Alex comes off of a crash last week in Altenburg. Great sounds of the sled. Making his way through the lower part. Palazzo went into the red about midway down the track, and he'd go back into the green here by a small margin. So only 3 sleds have come down, and all 3 of them are separated by only 1/100th of a second. That's how close the timing is in the sport of luge.
Der Australier war Dritter beim Nationencup, jetzt im Team der nächste, der Zweite des Nationencups weiter.
Spectators making their way, and there was a huge crowd yesterday on hand for the action, as Johnny Gustafsson, relegated back to the qualifying group this week, After a couple of subpar weekends, the first of the Americans in today's race, 27 years old. Johnny had a career-tying best fifth-place finish to open up this season in Lillehammer, and he has trouble right off of that start gate trying to keep the sled down the center of the track. His start time recorded only as the third fastest, briefly in the green, but now the result of that early mistake put him briefly into the red. Gustafsson finished on the podium, third place in the Nations Cup. That was his second podium in as many Nations Cup races this season. For those of you who are unaware, the Nations Cup is a qualifying race held on Friday to get into the main race. Keeping it together barely down here at the bottom, Gustafsson with a time of 51.474, and it's still a tight race among these Nations Cup qualifiers. Now just 200 separate the top 4 athletes. Right off the bat, that is going to be an interesting corner to watch, corners 0 and 1 in today's event, because if these athletes can't negotiate those perfectly, they can kiss their contending runs goodbye. The winner of the Nations Cup on Friday was Ukraine's Anton Dukash. The 29-year-old currently holds the track record on this Winterberg course, a record he set on Friday. And it was not only his first, but the first ever Ukrainian top of the podium performance in Nations Cup. Fourth fastest start time. It'll be interesting to see if the track record can fall today. It's definitely warmer than yesterday, when track records were set in women's doubles and in women's singles and men's doubles. In fact, all 3 races yesterday, track records. Dukash having a good run so far through the Kreisel. Really good to see when Anton has a good weekend. He had a couple of top 7s last year at the World Championships, fell off a little bit this year in Altenburg, track he's very familiar with, but clearly comfortable in Winterberg as well, as he pulls away from the early qualifiers here in the World Cup race by a pretty wide margin, 1800s up on Johnny Gustafsson. His time of 51.29 is just 200ths off of the track record he set on Friday. Good morning to our friend Uda watching today in Dresden. Messages in. Summer, good to see you watching after watching you race yesterday. Wacom logged on this morning as we now shift gears into the seeded group. Now, Kasper's Rinks may still be among the seeded athletes, ranked number 15 in the World Cup standings, but he had a rough go in the final day of training, the seeded training on Friday. His last run down this track where he had a DNF with troubles down in the lower labyrinth. 21 years old, from the town of Rokas, Latvia. It'll be interesting to see how Dukash's time shapes up against these first 5 or 6 in the seeded group. We've got an Austrian coming up in just a couple of sleds. But so far, Kasper's Rinks not staying that close to Dukash. 1/10 of a second back midway. Great speed, 85.3 miles per hour. But nearly 2/10 behind the Ukrainian. And it was great speed for Rinks, but still trailing. Believe it or not, Anton Dukash clocked in at 88.7 miles per hour, which is about 3 miles per hour faster than anyone else so far. We talk so often about the Ukraine equipment and how they are always fighting a battle to keep up with the powerful nations. But that's some good speed generated by Dukash, who's leading over this man, Kasper's Rinks, with USA's Johnny Gustafson currently in third. The first of 4 Germans competing in their home country this weekend. Timon Grancagnolo, 21 years old. Actually, may only be 3 Germans, as I believe David Nussler is not in the field today. We'll try to figure out why that is. David, if you're watching, let us know what's going on. Timon just 0.005 of a second behind Dukash and now operating into the green. It's very likely that anything in the green from this point forward into the lead, I should say, should be a track record. Grancagnolo, the Saxonian, skidding in the labyrinth, having all sorts of trouble. He's been in the green. This could go back into the red pretty quickly at the finish, and it does. So there are a couple of key areas on this track we'll be watching as we move into the top contenders. The start and the finish. It's the first couple of curves, curve 0 and curve 1, and then the 11, 12, 13, 14 combination is going to be key all day long. As Timon is in second place, but a distant second place. First of the Austrians coming up now. Jonas Müller took last week off in Altenburg, where he said he's just not confident. And if you're not confident, you start thinking. It can be extremely dangerous. And he's tried to learn that track in Altenburg over the last few years. However, the risk of injury on that track was just simply too high for him, he said, especially with this weekend's European Championships, next month's World Championships looming. So here he is back on tour now, Jonas Müller of Austria, still ranked in the top 6 in the World Cup despite missing 1 race. He has 2 podiums, including a victory in Oberhof. Split time, well out in front of Dukash. So now the Austrian run begins as the Austrians and Germans will look to dominate this competition. Really great lines. Jonas Müller putting it down here with a track record of 50.722 for the 6-time World Cup winner. Welcome back from a week off, Jonas Müller of Austria.
So, und wir sind aber mal richtig laut. Riesenapplaus hier im Ziel ist er. Jonas Müller, neuer Bahnrekord.
Geil.
Jonas, war eine coole Fahrt, oder?
Still 3 more teammates of Jonas to come from Austria, 2 more Germans. But now the second of the 3 Latvians and the first here in the seeded group. Youth Olympic gold medalist Gins Berzinch, 22 years old from Sigulda. Gins in the top 10 in the World Cup. Coming off of 2 season-high 6th-place finishes the past 2 weeks. This is the 48th season of the FIL World Cup, and most every year that there's been a World Cup, there's been a race here in Winterberg. Now out of 11, 12, 13, and 14. No big incidents there, but losing speed a little higher up the track. Berzinch in third place right now. It's Austria leading over Ukraine, Latvia, and Germany. Those are the top four. Only 9 sleds in out of the 30 racer field today. Quick update, we mentioned David Nussler of Germany missing this weekend's race. Our thanks to a couple of viewers for weighing in. David, you may recall, broke his foot last week. Well, you may recall he had an accident in Altenburg. The result was a broken foot. So unfortunate for Nussler. We wish him a speedy recovery. I doubt it will be in time to race on his home track next week in Oberhof, but we'll see. Tucker West, the next of the Americans. Tucker, a 3-time winner on the World Cup. One of the very first races we ever covered in live streaming here in Winterberg in 2016. Tucker was on the podium, perhaps even in the lead of the race after the first run, and then was disqualified. I think it was a weight issue or a runner issue, I forget what. But that was unfortunate, as Tucker could have been on his way to a rare European podium finish. He's had several, of course, in team relay, including at the World Championships. 29-year-old, 3-time Olympian. Qualified for the Sochi Olympics, his first Olympic Games, as an 18-year-old. Not down the center of the track, but staying off of the walls, well in back of the Austrians right now. Tucker West of the USA. His best result this year, a 7th place finish in Sigulda. He finished 4th at the World Championships last year, but he is slower than everyone down this track out of the first 10 here in run number 1 of the men's singles competition. Tucker's teammate Johnny Gustafson, I believe, has competed in all of the relays except one this year. And the one that Tucker qualified for was one where the United States didn't make it to men's singles in that relay. And there you see, didn't catch that on the live shot, but one of the issues that skid into the finish curve of 14, but Tucker had lost a lot of speed already up to that point. Wolfie Kindl was the fastest among the seated athletes in training on Friday. Kindl, a multi-time podium winner already this season in both singles and doubles, to go along with his Olympic medal in singles in Beijing. It's Austria against Austria. Kindl with a relatively slow start. He's been a little injured. His starts have improved over the past many seasons from 10 years ago, say. But he's keeping it closer than anyone else has. Currently, Jonas Mueller leads everyone else by over a half second. Let's check out Kindl's split here. Yeah, within 0.2 of a second. And Wolfie can generate some speed down below if the lines are good, and they appear to be. Kindl to the finish. How close can he catch Jonas Mueller? He keeps it about at the same distance, 1900s back. Wolfgang Kindl currently in 2nd place. 2 more Austrians coming up next. The Gleicher brothers are up. So Wolfie, with the sore left shoulder, still manages those powerful paddles on the start ramp. You may recall last season his teammate Madeleine Egla had basically a shoulder not functioning, but she still managed to win a race, the World Cup in Lake Placid. So if you can at least have a decent start, you can let the sled do a lot of work on the way down. It's unlike bobsleigh, where that sport, the start is seemingly 90% of your success recipe. Now David Gleicher, the first of the Gleicher brothers, going back to back. David with 2 podiums this season on the World Cup, both of them third-place finishes. He has not had his greatest success on this track. He finished 9th in this race, the World Cup last January. Already trailing Jonas Müller by a 1/10 of a second, despite a decent start time, 3.84. Gleicher, 30 years old, his brother Nico, 27. They're both originally from the little village of Hall in the Tyrolean Alps. Nicely done down here below, good lines through the labyrinth. Uphill to the finish, Gleicher in second or third place. 3/10 of a second in back of teammate Jonas Müller.
Finish time 51.03 for David Gleicher from Austria. Third place.
The 2018 Olympic gold medalist took that title in South Korea before he had ever been on a podium in any World Cup race. There's an interesting story. He was the last athlete in, and I mean the last, any discipline, any nation, as he got penciled in for the third and final Austrian spot just about 10 days or so before the Olympic Games. Now the fourth and final of the Austrians. Nico Gleicher, the World Cup leader, 27 years old. Nico on the podium 3 times this season, including 2 victories, top 7 in every race. Sliding through the snow and over those first few curves, shooting down off of corner number 2. Just 600ths back. Nico's kept it closer to Müller than any of the past few sleds. Now about a 1/10 of a second back. Jonas Müller taking that week off, really put it down with the track record. The Germans still coming up. Let's see where Nico stands here at the finish line in second place, exactly a 1/10 of a second back. And a very familiar sight this season. Austria currently in first, second, third, and fourth in the men's single standings. The difference, of course, being this year, the race, or this week, the race isn't yet over. In fact, far from it, as 2 very strong contending Germans are coming up.
Und begrüße den Weltcup-Führenden hier im Ziel, David Gleicher, Nico Gleicher.
The PA announcer even getting the 2 Gleichers a little bit confused there as Felix Lach grabs those handles. Look at the focus and the aggression on the face and eyes of the 2-time Olympic champion. Felix a little unhappy with his start times this season, he said. But he does have the second fastest right behind Jonas Müller on a track where Felix is comfortable. He's competed this year already at the German National Championships. Lach with 52 career World Cup wins. The 35-year-old from Berchtesgaden, still trailing by about a 1/10 of a second behind Austria. If he can keep it within 2/10, he'll at least break up that top 4 Austria standing at the moment. Beautiful drive lines down here for Felix Lach to the finish in 4th place. Over a 1/4 of a second behind Jonas Müller, so he'll have a lot of work to do in run number 2. With Max Langenhans still to come, it's Felix trailing 3 from Austria.
Das ist alles unfassbar schnell, was hier heute passiert. Also bis vor 10 Minuten wäre das auch noch Bahnrekord gewesen und die Isar.
Felix still going strong, still great athleticism, like his Bavarian counterparts, the Tobys. He's working hard to stay in perhaps the best physical conditioning of his career. Max Langenhahn coming off of a bit of a streak here. Not only did he win last week in Altenburg, Max has won the race the last 2 seasons here in Winterberg, and he says he's very, very comfortable here. Winterberg has always gone well. He already noted what we've seen earlier this week. He said the Austrians are going to be tough to beat. Not a perfect start ramp line there for Max as he puts down the 7th fastest time, but has to do a small correction right off of the bat. The 25-year-old from Friedrichsroda in the Thuringian state of Germany. Certainly Max has the ability to cut into that 0.07 of a second deficiency. He's second behind Nico Gleicher in the World Cup standings within 15 points, which is just 1 place on the podium if they're both on the podium. This will be fun to see right here to the finish. Did Langenhahn pick up any time? He lost, but he lost just a little bit. So 1/10 of a second back, only 0.09 of a second behind Nico Gleicher, who he trails in the World Cup rankings. So it's Müller, Gleicher, Langenhahn, Kindle, and Locke. All Germany and Austria in the top 6 right now, with 1 more remaining in the seeded group. As you see there, Max didn't have the perfect line down the start ramp, but he avoided any major mistakes.
Die Fans von Max sind da und sorgen schon für Stimmung. Das gibt Optimismus bei dem zweiten Lauf, da ist noch alles drin.
Final athlete here in the seeded group, coming off of his first podium of the season, Dominik Fischnaller, lurking just out of the top of the World Cup rankings with a 3rd place finish last week in Altenburg, 4th the week before, top 10 in every race. And with a good race here, Dominik could end up in the top 4 of the World Cup. We actually have 1 more seeded athlete still to come. Christers Apeliots waiting on deck. Waiting on deck, a baseball term. Actually, probably a nautical term. And look at Fischnaller, making it look smooth as usual for Dominik. Within 1/10 of a second. This is maybe not going to contend with Jonas for the top spot, but he'll be in a group of athletes 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th here if he has clean lines at the bottom. Italy's Dominik Fischnaller to the finish. 83.3 miles per hour, 5th place right now. Breaking up, at least for the moment, that Austria-Germany stronghold. Dominik, the only non-Austrian or German in the top 7 at the moment. It's so tough to figure out what the best lines are down below. Those corners are so tight. The track seemingly not that wide at that point. Very similar to the labyrinth down at the lower part of the Königssee track, which you hit directly out of the Kreisel. Now the final athlete amongst the seededs, Christers Apeliots. 1 podium this year at home in Sigulda, where he has won races in seasons past. In fact, Christers with 5 career World Cup victories.
Apeliots ist gestartet mit einer Zeit von 3,85 Starttime.
Christers, an Olympic medalist in Yangjing, Beijing 2022 as part of Latvia's team relay where they captured bronze. Christers' sister competed yesterday, Kendia Apeliot. Christers has been a fixture among the Latvian men in the relay each week, including some podium finishes and a victory. Now he has skids here into 11. Let's see if he cleans it up. He does, but how much speed did he give away? I bet quite a bit, as he has an 84.7 mile/hour speed, losing a lot of time down below. Aprio's in 10th place at the moment to conclude action among the seeded group. Still 13 qualifying athletes to come. A couple of them could bite their way into the top 15. Krister's problems occurred about 2/3 of the way down the track, right there, in an area that we haven't seen a lot of mistakes this weekend. So standings, they will not show up on your screen as we move back into the non-seeded group, but I'll give you a quick refresher if you don't have it open on your computer. Müller of Austria, followed by Nico Glacier of Austria. Max Langenhahn of Germany, 3rd. 4th, Kindle. 5th, Dominik Fischnauer. 6th, Felix Lach. 7th, David Glacier. And 8th, Anton Dukash of Ukraine. Now back to the action with Mateusz Sokovic of Team Poland. Matthias, 2 top 20s this season, including 14th place in Oberhof. Top 20 will make it into run number 2. And Matthias has done that in 2 of the last 3 weeks. He's qualified for a second heat. Nicely done down below, Sokovic. 9/10 of a second behind the leaders. As we look ahead to the next 4 or 5 to see who among them could qualify or make their way at least into the top 20, if not the top 15. Certainly Pecci and Gufla of Italy coming up, the next 2 might have a shot. Svante Kohala has been pretty steady all season long in a regular fixture in run number 2. Ninnis still to come. We've got a couple of young Canadians who have done well on the junior circuit this year. They're still coming up ahead. And top 20 will be the goal for all of these athletes in hopes of making it in a run number 2. Now it's 20-year-old Lucas Pecci of Italy, born in Bruneck, now calls his home Wengen, and his favorite track is La Plagne. And there was a Junior World Cup earlier this year in La Plagne. Pecci with 19th fastest start time. The 3/10 of a second back, we have seen slower, but not a lot slower so far in this race. It's really the challenge for these athletes in the second half of the draw after the seeded group is to just find those little things from week in and week out to see whether they can find a little extra speed, a little extra experience on these tracks in hopes of making the top 20. Right now, 17th place for Pecci. That puts him ahead of American Tucker West and Matthias Sokovic, and a possibility of cracking the top 20. We'll know over the next 4 or 5 sleds.
Vergleichen wir mal die Zeit zum alten Bahnrekord, da wäre nur 13. hinter gewesen. Also das heißt, die Bahn ist schnell, alle sind gut unterwegs. Auch wenn natürlich dann Fehler
passiert bei diesem hohen Tempo, du hast es eben schon angesprochen. Ein Applaus für den Italiener im Ziel.
Da ist er, Luca Pecci, hier auf dem Ziel. Und diesen Gedanken, den du gerade aufgesprochen hast.
The Rodel Welt Cup continues from Winterberg, Germany. Alex Gufler, starter number 20 out of 30 in the men's singles opening run. This is World Cup stop number 6. Gufler, 22 years old, from Plat de Passier, northern Italy. And
Jetzt am Start und
I
gestartet.
challenge all of our educated viewers for some very tough trivia here. So tough, I do not know the answer myself, but can you name the last non-South Tyrolean Italian to compete on the Italian World Cup luge team? Someone from Rome or Milan or Florence. Have there been any? Let us know on our YouTube chat window. Rufler a half second back and skidding his way into corner number 11. Losing all sorts of speed. The Italian is in 20th place out of 20. And all Armin can do is breathe a sigh of disappointment down there in the coaches area.
Und hier wieder ins Ziel hineingeklatscht. Euer Applaus für Alex Rufer.
Love the enthusiasm of the public address announcer, lifting the spirits of even the athletes that have a rough run. Svante in the house. Koala, starter number 21, and the lone entrant from Sweden this weekend, his teammate. Actually, the second men's singles athlete just missed out in making the draw this weekend. Svante with top 15s or top 16s in each of the last 3 weeks. In fact, he's made it into the second run in all but one race. So great, steady progress for Team Sweden this year. It's been fun to see. And we expect we'll see Svante competing with his sister next week when the mixed singles resumes on the track in Oberhof, the second mixed singles and mixed doubles events of the year. Svante right now sliding alongside the group of athletes we've just seen in that 18th, 19th, 20th position. If he can keep it straight down these final few curves. 18th place right now for Svante. Looking at the rest of the field, still going to be tight. Certainly not a top 20 guarantee yet, but Koala's put himself in a position to be there. Great crowd of spectators, luge fans already making their way here in run number 1 as they get set for the second and final heat, along with the team relay. 10 a.m. here in Winterberg. So many media on hand for these European Championships. They had to move the press center this weekend from the bottom of the track to the top. And a pair of Slovakians now getting ready back-to-back, young and old. Here is the youngster, Marian Skupek, who's from Gelnica, Slovakia. His favorite track is Whistler, where the World Championship is scheduled for February 7th and 8th, 6th, 7th, and 8th. Marian's ambitious goal for the season is a top 15 overall. He currently sits 23rd in the World Cup standings with one appearance in run number 2. He had a 19th place finish in Oberhof. Another that's going to be in that 18th, 19th, 20th spot here, depending on these last few curves and how fast the equipment is running. 137 kilometers an hour, 17th place right now for Marian Skupek. Currently, American Tucker West sits on the bubble in 20th place right now in hopes of getting a second run, but his position is very, very thin, because coming up next is an experienced athlete who's done well on this track. It's this man's teammate, Josef Ninnis, waiting at the top. Ninnis with a lot of runs over his 20-year career on the World Cup. You heard that right, 20 years competing, at least 20 years on the World Cup. A 5-time Olympian. Ninnis tied for 11th at this World Cup race in Winterberg last season. Conservative on the paddle. Start time will reflect that. 22nd fastest start time out of the 23. But this is where Josef goes to work. Keeping it within 3/10. We're looking at about a 12th or 13th place time potentially, unless he loses a lot more time. And he actually has lost some time in the last few curves. So now it's going to be closer to Josef. The track appears to be okay still, although you see some skid marks down here in curves 12 and 13. Same speed as Skupek, 15th place right now for Ninnis. Tucker West out of the race now officially, and sitting in 20th place is Svante Kohala, in hopes that all of the rest of the 7 sliders will have slower times so he can have a second run. But for Ninnis, he just does it well. He doesn't do it contending for podiums, although he has won in his long career. But he is regularly in the top 15. Ninnis, if he makes the Olympics next year, no reason to believe he won't. He'll be the only athlete in the sport of luge to compete in 2 Olympic Games in Italy. Now Theo Downey, 2 podiums this season on the Junior World Cup. That was back in December in La Plagne. The 19-year-old, this may be a World Cup senior debut for the athlete from Edmonton, Alberta. Can't think of a lot of lugers from Edmonton over the years. One great bobsledder, of course, Pierre Luders out of Edmonton. Large city, 3-hour drive north of Calgary. Theo skidding his way from top to bottom, and now nearly turning the sled off, learning some early lessons on the World Cup. The hand briefly comes out to balance himself, and he successfully does it, but it will be the slowest of all time so far. 2.5 seconds. Welcome to the World Cup, Theo Downey. Still just 19 years old, and still with a chance to race later today in team relay. For the most part, it's been a pretty rough Winterberg weekend for Team Canada. Women's doubles, there was a crash. Look at Theo, that runner reaching up to the wood at that point. Seiya Kobayashi. Like Natalie Mogg, like Alex Ferlazzo, Seiya is a one-person national federation at the moment in terms of active athletes on the World Cup. Seiya's best result by far, a 16th place finish in Innsbruck. Not a straight line down that start ramp, so a little bit of steering. 16th fastest start time of the 25 so far here in run number 1. Expect that we'll see Seiya next weekend as well in the mixed singles competition. Competed in Lillehammer in the opening event. Great opportunity for these one-person nation teams to pair up with other athletes and get some relay or in this case mixed racing. Saya had an issue very similar to Theo Downey just a moment ago. Same curve, riding the same wall up high, and the result is a 24th place time. So Svante Koala still sitting on the bubble in 20th place in hopes of getting a second run. Saya's favorite track is the track in Nagano, which has not hosted many world-class events in the 26 years since the Olympic Games there. In fact, it may not even be operating anymore. As Aidan Mueller will hope to put a second American into the second run here in Winterberg. Mueller from West Islip, from the center of Long Island, outside of New York City. 20 years old, his first season full-time on the World Cup. Now makes his home in Lake Placid.
Aidan Müller mit einer
Aidan's best results, he's had 3 28th place finishes here as he still learns lessons around the world on these World Cup tracks. Svante Koala's position in the top 20 will remain safe as Aidan will not catch up to those times. But a decent piece of driving here for Mueller. 1.3 seconds back in 24th place. It'll be interesting to hear if the coaches for the U.S. gave Aidan a safer setup of the sled. It was far from fast, at least in comparison to the top 10 in this race, but his driving was pretty good. As we check out the slow-mo, I often miss a lot during the live bit, but it looks like Aidan did a good piece of driving, and he stayed safe from top to the bottom. Well wishes to his mom back home. Certainly a top 20 contender right now if the track is still yielding some fast times. Here's 35-year-old Vali Cretu. Vali with 2 top 20s this year, the best being a 19th in Sigulda. Again, the conservative paddles from a man who's not a fast starter. Cretu, a 4-time Olympian, Whistler, Sochi, Pyeongchang, and Yangjing. If he's in within 600 or 6/10 here, he will be in the top 20. He is not. That's, of course, providing he's safe the rest of the way down. To the finish, Valentin Cretu of Romania, 1.245 in back of Jonas Mueller. His day is potentially done. Certainly his men's singles race is finished, but Cretu will be in a little competition with teammate Eddie Krejcian in a little bit to see who makes team relay. And Valentin loves racing as much as anyone, but I'd be interested to see that even if Eddie Krejcian, coming up in just a couple of sleds here, has a slower time, whether Valentin would cede his spot to Eddie to give Eddie a rare run at team relay. Let's see what happens. First things first, Daniil Martinovsky, a 20-year-old Ukrainian with very little World Cup experience.
Gestartet mit einer Startzeit von 3,89.
Ukraine with 3 in today's competition. As we've mentioned throughout the season, as far as participation trophies, Ukraine is right up there with Germany, Austria, the USA, Italy, and Latvia, with not 1, but up to 2 or 3 sometimes entries in each of the 4 races each weekend. Marcinovski banging some walls in the lower labyrinth to the finish line in 27th place. Start number 28, start finish 27. 3 remain right now, and Svante Koala still sitting in 20th place. And actually just 2 left in the race. Eddie Krejcian of Romania waiting up next. Dylan Morse of Canada will be the last to go.
From Romania, next lap.
Eddie, 24 years old, from Sinaia, Romania. He was part of the Olympic program in Beijing, competing in men's singles. 32nd place finish. I'm not even sure we're going to see 32 next year in Italy for the Olympic Games. They have stricter qualifying standards this year and fewer athletes in each of the races. Only 11 right now in women's doubles, which is amazing. It'll make for a very short race, and also a lot of stress and tension as these athletes try to qualify for the precious few spots in the next 12 months. Eddie Krejcian out of the Kreisel, now making his way to curve 11, 7/10 of a second back. Another athlete that will not catch the top 20. Top 20 very rare for Krejcian as he skids his way into corner number 14. 134K, 27th place for Eddie. That's 3 spots behind Valentin Cretu, so advantage Valley for the relay later today. A lot of respect for these athletes who each week train hard all week long. They spend hours on their equipment. They try their best to qualify in the Nations Cup, and for these they do. For Eddie, for example, almost every week he qualifies, and then they get their 1 run. And all they're looking for is a little improvement from week to week. Run number 1 here in Winterberg concludes with our second Canadian. 20-year-old Dylan Morse, a podium earlier this season on the Junior World Cup. Quick correction from the earlier Canadian. A viewer writes in to let us know that Theo is not from Edmonton, but from Airdrie, Alberta, although Theo wrote Edmonton on his biography. As far as Dylan's concerned, born in England and calls Calgary his home. Calgary has produced 4 Olympic medalists, all in 2018, Team Canada. Breakthrough performance for the Canadians at those Olympics. They were rebuilding for so long. They built up an Olympic medalist program. Now they're rebuilding again. And Dylan Morse looking forward to hosting the World Championships in 3 weeks at home in Whistler. There will be no second run for the Canadians on this weekend, at least in men's singles. As far as Dylan versus Theo, advantage Dylan Morse. So we expect to see him in a few hours for Team Relay. Canadians will also race next week in Oberhof before the entire world of luge heads over to Canada for the International Training Week. Yesterday, Yannick Mueller was on the podium in men's doubles. Right now, it's his brother, Jonas Mueller, leading the way in men's singles. And that's with the Mueller family on hand. They surprised the brothers yesterday by showing up here in Winterberg, and they've been treated well. Austria 1-2-4, Germany 3-6-7. Dominic Fischneller breaking up that monopoly in 6th place right now for Italy. Dominic actually in 5th. As we see the top 20, Svante Koala slid into 20th place, and he hung on to that spot. He'll lead things off in run number 2. That second run, the final run of the men's singles competition, racing for the European Championship, comes your way in just about 20 minutes from, yes, sunny Winterberg, Germany. Stick around, we'll be right back.
So weit lehne ich mich jetzt aus dem Fenster, denn die Jungs vom Eisteam, ja, die lächeln auch zufrieden und sagen, ja, wir wissen, wie es geht und vielleicht wissen wir auch noch, wie es noch besser geht. Also ich will keinen Druck aufbauen, weil das ist Wahnsinn, was wir hier erleben an diesem Wochenende. Und schön, dass ihr dabei seid, schön, dass ihr das hier mit uns teilt und mit uns feiert.